Oh, I didn't print off my, hold up.
Oh, hello.
Hi, give me 1 second.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. We have some people starting to come in. So tonight is the second series of the Growing a Medicine Garden with Lottie Spady. I am Naja. I'm the education coordinator for Keep Growing Detroit. I will be here just to facilitate, help things go along here, but it is all on Lottie tonight. We are talking about the Herbalism 101, exploring the world of herbal formulation. This is going to be very informative. I'm ready to learn a lot, so I'm sure everybody else is. As you all know, this is a free class, but if you do feel so compelled to give a donation, we do accept donations of any form. That can be your time, that could be you volunteering in your neighborhood. So just keep that in mind. And I guess we will go ahead. I'm gonna pass things over to you, Lottie. Are you ready, Lottie? Got everything you need?
I just need 1 second, please. I am so sorry. I did not
No
print.
problem.
Okay, I didn't print one thing off.
Oh yeah, we still have people coming. So, take your time. How's everybody tonight?
This is what I need.
So tired. We're good.
Oh yeah, long day.
Long day. If anybody has GYT, pay cards came today, so that was fun.
Okay. Okay. Glad to see people didn't lose their power. I know a lot of power just went out with this storm.
I was afraid my power was gonna go out before class. I was like,
I
no.
did for a second.
My lights flickered too. I was like, no, you won't. Oh, no, you won't. Okay, let me just grab this off the printer.
Okay. Yeah, we still got people coming in.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening.
Okay.
All right, so I'm gonna stop sharing here.
Okay. Okay, here we are. Everybody, let's see, how many people we got here? 17. Oh, that's pretty good. We'll give about maybe just another minute or two for people to get in here.
Okay.
Hi. Yeah, get off of me. You rude. You're gonna get a whipping. What's my idea? Do you want one too?
Somebody's about to get a whooping.
I know, and she dealing them out too, doling them out. You want one? You want one? You want one? Everybody get.
That was like an Oprah giveaway.
Yep. Okay, so I guess we can get started. Just want to stay on time here. Welcome, welcome, welcome everyone to this second class here on Growing Medicinal Herb Garden. And our topic is herbal formulations and medicine making techniques. I want to go over what we're going to do in this class, just so that you know. We are going to do a quick not a review, but just a place to bring up the last class. If there are any questions, revelations, insights, that would be just a quick sharing. I'm going to do a introduction to herbal medicine making techniques and show you a few examples of things that I have. And then we're going to talk about the medicinal properties. You're going to be given, everybody's going to be given at the end of the class, a native Michigan plant pack. And we're going to talk about some of the medicinal properties of a few of those plants tonight also. And I'd like you also, if we have time, I hope, to think about an herbal mission statement. And I'm going to talk more about that later, but it's just, you know, thinking about maybe the way you want to frame or work your herbal magic or whatever it is. So I'm going to open the class as we always do. Let me share my screen here. And as always, we're going to open and acknowledge, and with an acknowledgement of some sort. And this is geared toward our herbalism. It takes a whole village to heal a community. This is for our ancestors, our elders, elders, and the generations that carried this holistic science through and beyond Middle Passage. May we continue to preserve and share this ancient knowledge to heal humanity and all life on Mother Earth. Remember that our ancestors speak to and through us. And as always, if you'd like to acknowledge your ancestors or invite them into the room, please feel free to place their names in the chat and we can have them as part of this sacred work. I am going to do a quick, this is a quick what and when. Last month, which was week 1, I guess I should have said class 1 really. We did our overview of environmental justice, the impacts, an intro to the medicinal properties of some backyard herbs. And we had a little, I made a little vinegar, infused vinegar while we were at it. Tonight, like I said, our native Michigan garden herbs and their actions, creation of a garden mission statement, and formulating herbal medicines and techniques. Next month, we will be gathering in person and doing some medicine making, and all the participants will be getting their medicine making kit. And then week 4 is when we'll focus on garden planning. That's another in-person class with plant identification walk, talking about best and safe practices for wildcrafting and the actual plant distro. So I'm going to stop this here, I think, for now. And pop here in the chat for a minute. Thank you. Thank you so much. Oh, I love it when all the ancestors come pull, they be rolling up in here in the chat like, we're here, we're all here. Thank you so much for sharing your ancestors' names, their energy, the land, the places that you all are from, and all the people that made it possible for you to be here tonight. We had a question about the location for the next class, and I'm not sure it's decided on yet, but we'll get that as soon as possible. So the first thing I wanted to do is open it up a bit and just make sure, thinking of our last time together, did anyone have any questions or comments or insights or revelations since the last class? We went over plantain, catnip, burdock, dandelion, and mullein. Did anybody go pick anything? Did you make something? Tell me just a little bit, or how you feeling now. Just a quick little check-in. If you like, you don't have to. Let me move this to where I can see.
Share.
Awesome.
Oh,
And
sorry. This is Jessica. Sorry about that.
Okay.
But I didn't go pick or make anything, but I did like take notes of what each of those plants did, because I have a few family members with a lot of digestive issues and gastro issues, and I know that was something that the reasoning why I was taking this class in the first place is to kind of help with some of those naturally. So, just the excitement of me sharing those different herbs and them, trying to figure out which way would be best for them to, incorporate into their diets. And, just it was very exciting, because me and my sisters got together and we, oh, we're gonna make this. So that was a good time. Just wanted to share that. But it was a lot of things that could help them in their, health situation. So
That is awesome. That's awesome. I'm so happy to hear, like you said, you and your sisters got together. And that is one of the ways to make it really relevant, right? Is like you're applying it to the people you love right around you. You're really motivated to make it happen, So thank you so much for that share. I saw Latrina has her hand up, a hand up, Latrina.
Hi, thank you so very much, Lottie and Naja. Keep Growing Detroit, as well as the other people that are here. I'm super excited. I missed the previous class. However, Naja submitted me the YouTube video, which I was swept. I was swept in regards to the plants that are right here and available as some of the plant, as I have been exploring my community, exploring my backyard, exploring the parcels that recently purchased, finding a wonderful mullein plant last season when Sterling came out to do a soil test, and she stumbled across this little bitty floret. Now this second season, she is in bloom. She is big and beautiful. As I transferred her from one location to a bee pollinator area, and she is big and beautiful and blooming. As she is a testament to myself, as she is the very first plant that I sought out 3 years ago or 4 years ago when I first started my herbal journey, when I first denounced grass and embraced the weed.
Ooh.
So
Yeah. Ooh, we in church now, Church of the Weed. The Weed Tabernacle is right here.
yeah, so burdock, milk thistle, goldenrod. I even have a wonderful red root that has blessed my place, my special place. So I'm just treating nature differently. I'm loving nature and I'm appreciating nature and I'm embracing nature. As when I first started this journey, I came in tearing down everything, chopping down trees, cutting down. But as I have a change has happened in this process, which makes me cut around the the little dandelion and the red clover and the milk thistle to nurture them, the plantain to capture them and bring them in and save them. So I'm just glad to be here. I'm glad to have you teaching me, Lottie. I'm feeling the energy of the other classmates as look, as those hands are going up. I see them. Those hands are going up as we all have testimonies and stories to talk about and share as we love herbs and we understand the benefits that they have for not just my very own life, but the life of my family and community. And this stuff, you live it. This is not anything that we just do and say. We live this life. So the more that I live this life, the more joy that I'm able to express. So I yield the floor. I'm grateful. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. That was such a warm and heartfelt and truth-packed. I mean, I can relate to so much of that. Thank you so very much for your testimony. I think Stacy had her hand up. And then
And we
we'll
had Jessica Pitts too. I actually accidentally hit the button on her, so.
Okay.
She hand up too, so.
Okay.
Okay, so I just wanted to say that when I left the meeting, I went outside and my neighbor was out there. And she was so excited when I was telling her about it that she pulled a book out and gave me a book. And then she went and got a book and she started planting things in her front yard. Then she didn't want to cut the grass anymore. I was like, I get a ticket from the city. But it was really inspirational to learn about the stuff that's right in our own backyards. And like, I didn't even realize dandelions did anything other than, multiply rapidly. But it's kind of nice to learn things and share them with the neighbors so they can also be excited and we can be in this journey together.
That is such an awesome community building story, like just like how the weeds travel, the community that can be built around it. That is an exciting aspect of this too, I think. Thank you very much. Jessica Pitts.
Peace and good evening to you, Lottie and Naja and everybody. I just wanted to share, I had a moment this morning. I woke up and my eye was swollen and a little crusty and it's been irritating the past few days. And my first thought was, I am creating space to be able to go out in my backyard and know exactly what I need to do to address that, as well as, some of the other common or uncommon issues and ailments that we come across either for ourselves or for our family. So that just really excited me, just that was my first inclination. I'm thinking like, okay, I need a cold compress and what kind of herbs do I so I'm just really excited. And I echo the sentiment of the previous person that spoke. This class has awakened something in me. I've already been like on a journey of, I actually created a t-shirt that says nature is my religion and my garden is the altar. Yes. And so
where can we buy those at?
Well, actually find me on just Girls Gardening on Instagram, actually. But nonetheless, like it just really, like this has started it sparked something in me. And now I look at, when I go through my garden, I look at the things that I didn't plant differently, and just, I'm not so quick to pull things up as I was before, in terms of, put what we call weeding. And even to call them weeds, I'm relearning that it's nature's way of providing what we need. It's our pharmacy. It's the earth's pharmacy. And I'm just really grateful to be here and to be in this class and just to learn, the ways of, nature and what nature has provided and how to properly use it. So thanks for letting me share that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I'm serious about that t-shirt now. So I'm gonna have to get that link in the chat or find you on Instagram. And that's a true statement. I'm willing to wear it. Let me look in the chat. Here we have Nicole Talley. said that I'm trying to preserve all of my burdock that is just growing wherever in my yard. And won't it grow wherever? Yes, it will. So Laquetta, or is that Lakita? Now I'm trying to remember. Where's
It's Laquetta.
Laquetta? Thank you. Laquetta said, I've been spotting herbs, some of everywhere. Haven't foraged, but just being able to identify them and tell people helpful things about them. Awesome. It is empowering, isn't it? It really does make you look at things a whole nother way. I can remember when I first started learning things, like, especially if you like cut through a vacant lot. I mean, it's like when you cut through a vacant lot, I remember a poet, Blair, had a poem that talked about desire lines. And vacant lots have desire lines. Usually it's a diagonal strip where everybody walks on to get to where they want to go. You know what I mean? So it's like you're trying to go from where you want to go, get from A to B. But once you learn this whole layer of information and language, you're never the same again. You can't just walk through a vacant lot, or you can't just walk through a park, or walk down a sidewalk, or walk anywhere without pointing something out, or asking, like, what is that? Okay, wait a minute now, what is that? And so it's like cutting new facets onto your lens. We look at the world in one way, but there's so many other entry points that you can look at the world from. It's truly, I feel like it's, really worlds within worlds within worlds. So thank you all so very much for sharing from the previous class. That was awesome. And so what I'm going to do now is talk a bit about medicine making techniques. Now, there are as many medicine making techniques and ways to make things as there are herbalists and plant enthusiasts and people that speak with plant ancestors and plant spirits and sit with them from long ago to just now. I mean, we know we're making new stuff now. They're making special extraction machines just to make infused oil now, whereas I never used to do that before. So, but I'm just going to start by talking about some basic medicine making techniques and show examples where I have some. And you can feel free. There was a question I did see about, Patricia Ing said that they picked some mint, tried them, and now would like to make some essential oil with them. And the question was which oil to use. So I am going to talk about oils a little bit later. So if it's okay, I think your question will be answered a little bit later. And I want to be sure to clarify the difference between an essential oil and an infused oil. So if I don't say that when we get to the oils, please remind me, okay? Okay, so the first thing I'm going to talk about is really basic tea. Making tea, and why just water as a whole is a medicine in and of itself. So when we think about tea, we're talking about things that can be extracted from water. Now, everything won't come out in water. Some things are better suited for alcohol, better suited for oil, but leaves in general, flowers, and some roots are good for using water as a basic extraction method. The benefits of water is that it's truly one of the most ancient forms of medicine. It can be very comforting and pleasurable to drink tea and have it as part of your ritual and part of your healing. It tends to be more affordable, especially if you have, access to clean, fresh water. It's one of the most affordable methods as opposed to capsules or tinctures. And the body is really able to assimilate the medicine easily from water. It is very hydrating unless you're using a diuretic herb like your dandelion leaves. Of course, then that would be promoting urination. But as a rule, it's hydrating, and a lot of illness happens because of dehydration in different body systems, because it leaves it open and susceptible. So for example, your nose, your mucous membranes, if they don't stay moist, then often there will be cracks in your mucous membranes and your sinuses. And that doesn't allow the mucous membrane to work the way it's supposed to, which is to keep out the pathogens that are trying to get in. You know, like the hairs in your nose plus the wet, sticky surface of your mucous membrane is designed to keep out the pathogens. And if there are little cracks in it, of course, they can get right in. So hydration is so important. Water is, of course, a good choice if you're avoiding alcohol. And water is best, so we're going to use the term solvent, S-O-L-V-E-N-T, the solvent. Think of like to dissolve. What gets the herbal property out of the herb and into something else is the solvent. We can use alcohol as a solvent or vinegar as a solvent. So we're talking about water as a solvent. And water is good for getting out minerals. It's good for getting out. We talked a little bit, I think, in the first class about mucilage, which is, think about okra. If you want to remember what mucilage is, that sticky, really moisturizing, really good for your body systems. That those kind of characteristics, like with your marshmallow root, cinnamon, there's some other ones that when they are extracted with water, they get sticky, like almost like egg white, but not that thick. And water is great for bringing that out. Alcohol doesn't do as good job of bringing that out. So some of the herbs that are good for use with water would be like violet, your violet leaves, violet flowers, corn silk, which is really good for urinary tract situations and bladder situations. Comfrey, I said cinnamon, licorice. So water is really good for bringing that out. Let's see. Some of the downsides of water is that some herbs don't taste good. They just don't taste good. And you're not going to want to drink a whole entire mug full of like wormwood. You are not going to do it. You're not. I don't care what you say. Let's see. Water. Although, like if you do have a bad tasting herb, you can combine it with some things that'll help it out, like cinnamon or cardamom or licorice, but you know, water falls away in that category. Also, water isn't really good for extracting things like resin. So resins are like, if you wanted to make, now you can make pine needle tea because that's, you know, the needles are fine, but as far as like, if you wanted to really get that pine sap, the pine sap, water is not gonna dissolve that. It's better in oil or vinegar, or oil or alcohol for resins. So another thing I want to point out about tea is we get those little tea bags. Oh, yes, it will. Wormwood will clean you out. Wormwood will turn you inside out to clean you out and leave you turned out. But it will. And it has its place. Very valuable herb, but it is it's aggressive, put it like that. So again about tea. So the tea bags that you get in the store are usually about like 1 or 2 teaspoons of plant material. And you may not be quite sure how long it's sat there. it is usually cut really, really fine. And the finer it's cut, the shorter time it stays fresh, you know? And it'll say something like brew from 3 to 5 minutes or 5 to 10 minutes. Now that is what I would call a pleasure tea. You know, it's going to be nice. It's going to pick up some of the most easy qualities. The aromatic qualities come out first. You know, it'll smell good. But for a medicinal tea, I usually let mine steep at least 30 minutes. At least 30 minutes. So let me pin, am I big? Do you all see me big? Because I see myself as tiny. Let me do this. Okay, here I am. So
yes, you're big.
am I big? I'm big now. So here I have like, this is dried calendula flower petals. This would be a 30-minute flower infusion. Oh, I'm making a mess all over my keyboard. Okay. And then you might have something like berries, elderberries, dried berries. Again, berries would be a 30-minute at least. Now, a lot of times I'll let mine sit on the counter overnight, but you want to do at least 30 minutes for a medicinal tea so that all of the medicinal properties, the reasons why you're taking it, come forward. You need to give it a chance. You know, some of those qualities don't come out right away. So berries are dried berries. And that is what is called an infusion. So the next thing that you might want to make with water is called a decoction, which is like a concoction, but it's a decoction. And that is for bark, root, and medicinal mushrooms. But even medicinal mushrooms usually even go longer with like a double decoction process, but you could do it, but mushrooms take a long time. And that is what we have. Like I have this ginger root here. And so like this astragalus root, I mean, you can see that this almost looks like branches that were snipped, even though it's the root. But, you know, and these are hard, you know, it's very hard and dry. And so in order to decoct all of the goodness out of a root, you're going to need to, you want to simmer it for 20 minutes first. Now, like I said, with the leaves and the flowers, what we're doing is I usually will take a mason jar and put about 1/3 dry material. I think we might have talked about this before. 1/3 dry material. If it's fresh plant material, like if you wanted to do a plantain infusion, I would loosely fill almost the whole top. You really want 3/4 fresh material. And then you pour your boiling water over it. And then I usually just put this on it, just so that all the aromatics don't escape out of it, and let it sit overnight, or at least 30 minutes. Sarsaparilla that's a root, right? I haven't worked with it a lot. I believe you use the root of sarsaparilla, and yes, it would be done as a decoction, which would be first 20 minutes on the stove in the pot, simmering. And then I would still cover it and let it steep 30 minutes after that. So, and the good thing about roots, like ginger, especially something like that, you can re-simmer it as long as it's yielding a good strong tea. Then you can keep like simmering it until it's given all of its goodness to the formula. So mushrooms, now dried mushrooms, like I have a big old reishi slice of mushroom, and it takes a very long time to get the goodness out of mushrooms. I will see if usually it's, and I'm trying to remember the exact name, but usually it's a slow simmer for many hours for some mushrooms, unless it's a powder. Now, if they're powdered, you're going to do that a little differently. You could add that. If you bought a mushroom powder, I would add it. I usually add mushroom powder like to my coffee when I'm brewing it, or you could add it to a tea, but it's not going to really strain out. You could like stir it up so that you can drink the little bits that are in the bottom, because it's not going to dissolve, you know? But those big dried mushroom chunks, and I will try to, I have an article on it's called it's a double extraction method for mushrooms. So I'll see if I can find that in time for the next class, just so that you have it if you're interested in mushroom decoctions or extractions.
Can you re-explain? At first, I thought you said you simmer for 20 minutes and then cover to steep for 30 minutes, but then you started talking about a mason jar and a third of the jar, and I wasn't quite sure how those two
Okay.
things connected.
Okay, I'm sorry. I switched without a turn signal. The mason jar, this is for infusions. So this is for leaves, flowers, and berries. Your lightweight things that you're gonna just let steep for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. I'm sorry. I mean, don't get too caught up on the time. You just want to steep it for a long time. 30 minutes. I usually do 30 minutes at least for an infusion, an herbal infusion. If it is roots or bark, which I didn't say before, bark, like wild cherry bark, it's going to be simmered for 20 minutes. And then you can just take it off the heat and put the top on and let it sit for 20 or 30 minutes. So you're just giving those roots. You can think of it like how lightweight leaves and flowers are, you know, the water's gonna pass through them and really suck everything out of them pretty easily. Whereas the roots, you know, they're harder and need more time. You could do sun brewing. I would probably do sun brewing with leaves, flowers, and berries. I would not know if it would be interesting to see how strong of a brew you would get with a root. You could try ginger, maybe something that you would really be able to tell the difference, but you know, that it was really in there. But I think for mint or your flowers or things like that, you could do sun brewing. And I'm sorry, I didn't catch who asked about the difference, the mason jar versus the simmering, but I want to be sure, did I answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay. Let's see. So yeah, we were talking about pleasure tea, medicinal tea, and that's why it's going to be important as you begin to work with your herbs is to make yourself some tea and try it so you can start to learn those flavor profiles. Some tea is very aromatic, but it'll have a lot of astringent properties, like it'll dry your mouth out. And that may not be pleasant in a whole cup of tea, even though you want that medicine in there. So you would need to know, like you need your marshmallow root or licorice or something that will provide that slip, that nice quality to make it soothing for you to drink it. If it's really pungent and bitter, you're going to have to play around with how much you can add before it becomes intolerable to drink it. You know, you can try to balance it out with hibiscus or, you know, cinnamon and your spices, especially like ginger and things like that, do a lot to tone down an herb that otherwise might not be that pleasant. So Tony Mitchell said she's tried sun brewing with ginger and burdock root when the sun was at its highest. Okay, for about 15 to 30 minutes. Okay, that's good to know. That's awesome. Because to me, burdock takes, were those fresh or dried? That's a good question. Tony.
They were dry.
They were dried. Okay. Okay. So that's good to know. That's good to know. Well, the sun can be pretty hot. I would still be curious, just me being curious, to compare that to an overnight, to steep in it for 20 minutes and letting it sit longer and do a taste difference to really see. But if you could taste it, that means it's in there. But it just still would be interesting to me to do a longer extraction just to see. Let's see. Okay, so I think we're going to move on from tea to tinctures. And there's a lot to go over with tinctures, but we're just going to do kind of an introductory dive. And let me move these things out of my way because I have some. And try to. Oh, did I leave my scissors down there at that end of it? That's okay, I'll get them in a minute. Let's start talking about tinctures. So with a tincture, your solvent is alcohol. So you can, the alcohol is what's going to pull out the medicinal qualities of the plants. And there are a lot of different alcohols you can use. The rule of thumb is this. Let me find something easy. Okay, I'll just do this for the sake of, because it's easy. All right, so the rule is you need to have at least 35% alcohol in order for your tincture not to go bad, to be shelf stable so that it will stay good. 35%. So I'm gonna use one, even though this is 151, we always use 150 just to make it easy. This is 150 proof, which means it's 75% alcohol. The percentage of alcohol is always half of whatever the proof is. So this is 75.5% alcohol, 151 proof. This here is some overproof rum, which is 92 proof. So what's that, 46% alcohol? So that's your rule of thumb. So you can use vodka. I usually use 100 proof. I used to use 100 proof vodka, but you could use 80 proof vodka. You can use Tito's or Pop Off. Get you like what you like. Use what you like. Use what you can afford. It's some people go so far as to order organic alcohol, organic grain alcohol. It's very expensive. They don't deliver it to Michigan because we don't sell. I didn't know you can get higher Everclear than this. You can get higher Everclear than this, but you can't get it in Michigan. Michigan we only go up to like 75%, I guess, alcohol, but they're in other states like Ohio, Texas, you can get higher proofs, and you can also like order organic alcohol, but you'd have to, like, I have a friend in Ohio. I shouldn't say this, probably it's being recorded, right? You can get it in other places, but anyway, so the kind of alcohol you use is very personal and maybe trial and error. I started with vodka, and I started with like a cheap vodka. I think it was like Seagram's vodka. I'm not sure, because I didn't know, and then I've tried Tito's. Sometimes my budget was like, you're not about to buy that. Not for making medicine. Now, if they're gonna eat this, they have this medicine, they're gonna have it in this. So now I use Everclear for all of my tincture making pretty much. I don't use vodka anymore. And that's just because I like the fact that, so like I said earlier, you might have something that has a lot of like pine bark or wild cherry bark, or something that has a lot of oil resins in it. Everclear will bring out those properties, and it works fine for other stuff too. So I tend to use Everclear. And if you needed to dilute it, you could, because it's 75% alcohol. That means you can add a good percentage of like filtered water and do the math. That would be a whole nother class. To get it, you can, as long as it's at least 35%, you can actually stretch this. And the price of it is pretty reasonable considering, when you look at vodka. So, and rum, I do like to use rum. I only use it for certain things. Like if it's like, this is a preference. When I make my blend called Golden Hooch, which is fresh turmeric, fresh ginger, cinnamon, cloves, star anise, and at the end I add some raw honey, but I like to extract it in rum just because it's good. But it's good for cold, flu. It's a warming, anti-inflammatory medicine. And it makes a good cocktail while you're at it. But rum is a preference. I've made, so one time I wanted to experiment, and I took dandelion leaf, dandelion root, which is a good spring detox blend because it supports your liver. It is good diuretic. It's a good, it helps you helps you with elimination, helps to detox the body. But I wanted to try it I tried it in whiskey with some orange peels, because you want people to take your medicine. Like yes, I know medicine is medicine, but why not make it, it could be delicious as well, right? So orange peel, dandelion leaf, dandelion root, and whiskey. That ended up being a very nice spring detox tincture as well. Let's see here. So like I said, okay.
I was gonna say, this is new to me, so can you get drunk off of this stuff? Like, how much are you taking? And can you just talk about that?
Thank you. That's really a good question. Especially I'm up here talking about making cocktails with it. So that's a great question. Oh, I don't have, this is a 2-ounce bottle. I don't have a 1-ounce bottle with me. Okay, so could you get drunk? Theoretically, yes. However, it helps to keep in mind, and I really do want to grab a 1-ounce bottle. Anyway, this is a 2-ounce bottle. And you usually make your tinctures in 1-ounce bottles, okay? A 1-ounce bottle is the equivalent of a shot, like a shot glass, the whole bottle. And you gotta get about 30, now remember, this is a 2-ounce bottle here, so I'm sorry that you're gonna have to imagine half of this. You get 30 dropperfuls, and you only take it by the dropperful. So you're taking a dropper full of alcohol. Sometimes, depending on what your regimen might be, you might be doing 3 droppers of 3 different tinctures. So the amount is really small if you really keep in mind that a whole 1-ounce bottle, like the kind you see when you go to the health food store, you know, those 1 ounce bottles, that is truly the equivalent of a shot, 1 shot of alcohol. So, and even a basic cocktail is usually made with 2 ounces of cocktail, 2 ounces of alcohol. And that's like at the bar when they're not trying to, you know, they're not as generous, but that's still, you know, not relative, not a lot. So you could, but would you? I doubt it, because the medicinal properties of the herb are going to kick in also. Like if you're taking it for relaxation, well, you're going to be asleep pretty soon if you take too much. If you're taking it for, I don't know, like, you know, like you don't want to take the medicinal quality of the herb is in there. And that's just like with any other kind of prescription, you wouldn't want to take more than you need for what you're taking it for. You see what I'm saying? So I hope that made sense.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. But it is interesting with certain, so like with the ginger infused rum, you know, yeah, I find it really interesting how herbal medicine works. I have used it to make like a fall cocktail with like apple cider and golden hooch and cinnamon and sugar around the rim, and made a wonderful drink. But it wasn't like a medicinal drink. It's almost like the smaller the quantity, the more your body treats it as a little bit of medicine. I don't know, it's weird. It works, but it really seems like the smaller, and even when you start getting into the spiritual properties of herbs and like flower essences, those are even smaller doses. So that's what I find fascinating about herbs, is that it works like on this really micro level. And it's almost like the more you get, the less fine-tuned it is. It's almost like you've overpowered its medicinal quality. If you take like a whole, you know, I'm gonna drink a whole, you know, 2 shots of golden hooch, and it's like, okay, fine, enjoy it. But if it's for medicine purposes, I tend to take this tiny quantities. Cheryl, you wanted the ingredients to which formula?
The one with the turmeric in it.
Oh yeah, golden hooch. It is fresh turmeric, chopped and diced, fresh ginger, chopped and diced, cinnamon. You can use cinnamon sticks, cinnamon chips. I wouldn't use the powdered cinnamon. And cloves. And I would fill it about halfway. This is a quart jar. It could be any jar, halfway. And then I use, you don't have to use rum, but it really goes together nicely. Or if you can get like they used to have the like spiced rum, although some spiced rums aren't that good. This is a spiced rum, actually. So, and then your rum. And then after it's done, I add a little bit of raw honey to it also. Not enough to make it like a syrup, but it just like, you know, just enough to just like sort of round out those ingredients a little bit.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I love it. Everybody loved it.
Well, Lottie, I have a quick question. What is the serving when you're taking the golden hooch? Like, how do you?
Medicinally,
Yes.
I usually take 2 or 3 dropperfuls. I like to add it to tea. It's great to add. Now that's a great thing about your tinctures. You know, you can add a dropperful to your hot tea. You could add it to just hot water with lemon if you wanted to. And I would do about 2 or 3. I like to use golden hooch when I feel so it is anti-inflammatory, but I also like it at the first sign of a flu. Like when you get those chills, when you're feeling cold and you know it's those chills coming on, because it's very warming.
Okay.
So I tend to use about 2 or 3 in a cup of tea when I'm trying to like nip it in the bud.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
it's like a hot toddy. It can be I won't say it's better, but it's in the list of hot toddies that you want. on your, in your toolkit of hot toddies. Yes. So let's see. And so some of the advantages of alcohol-based tinctures, and I know I haven't covered it all. I'm going to actually make one too while we're sitting here. Like I said, alcohol is good for getting out resins, like pine, spruce, yerba santa, propolis. Tinctures remain good forever. They don't go bad. Whereas tea is best made fresh. And even if you refrigerate it, it's really only going to last a couple of days, maybe a week, for freshness. But alcohol-based tinctures last forever. They will last forever. I'll just say decades. Another advantage to alcohol-based tinctures is that they can be convenient for travel because there's usually, your little 1 ounce dropper bottle. They're portable. You can take them on the plane and put them in your carry-on as long as it's 2 ounces or less. Easier to monitor doses, Some herbs are called low dose botanicals, and you really only want 1 or 2 drops. So an alcohol tincture is really good for moderating the doses. Time-wise, it's easier and quicker to take a dose of tincture than tea. And taste-wise, if it's a bitter herb, well, it's easier to toss back a dropper full and chase it with a glass of water or some tea than it is to have a whole cup of a not pleasurable tasting, herb. So we had a question about needing to strain. Okay, so after, yes, you would strain it. So this, for example, is anise hyssop. Can you see? Yes, you can see. This was fresh anise hyssop that I grew, which you all are going to get anise hyssop in your kit. And I put it up with 75% alcohol, which means Everclear. I'm going to talk, so that's written on my label, but I don't know if you can really see my label. Oh yeah, you can. Anise hyssop, you always want to mark whether it was fresh or dried, because that's immediately, if you mark it as fresh or dried, it's going to tell you something. Just like with tea, for fresh herbs, you're going to want to loosely fill the whole bottle. You want at least half or 3/4 of fresh herb. And then you fill it with your alcohol. If it is dried herbs, I don't have one here. It's the same as with the tea. You're going to only use about 1/4 to 1/3 of the herb and fill it with alcohol. So even though I can kind of look at this and tell, and a lot of times it'll settle and you'll know, it's really good to put on your label whether it was fresh or dried, so you'll immediately know something about how this was prepared. I made it with 75% alcohol. I always put the percentage of alcohol that it was made with. I'm gonna do a better label in a minute. The date it was made. This is from 2020. And I put the source for my herb. So if it says Vandalia, that means I grew this right on my homestead. If I ordered it from Mountain Rose, I might put MR, just a clue as to where you got it from. And I gotta plug my computer in just 1 second because it's showing low energy. Okay, sorry about that. I thought it was plugged in. Okay, good. And so what I would do, now as you can see, back to your question, Lori, this was made in 2020 and it is not strained. Okay. I will strain it. So that means to me that I have, so like in my apothecary, that means I've either never had an order or a need for this, or I have one that's kind of already in play, so to speak, you know? So once somebody wants or needs some of this, then I will strain it. And I just use a regular strainer, or you can use a coffee filter. You know what, when we meet in person, I'll bring my little strainer for straining the tinctures. And then after that, this is a different kind, but as you can see, it doesn't have any plant material in it. So that means I've strained it and I probably filled some orders with it, and it'll stay in the apothecary in the unstrained mode after that. So I don't strain it until I need to. They have to sit at least 6 weeks. Your tinctures are going to sit at least 6 weeks before they're ready. I mean, if somebody needed it in 4 weeks, yes, go on and skim some off the top. But usually 6 to 8 weeks for your tinctures. And if I don't need it right away, I just let it sit. As long as, you know, there's no plant material like above, and you wouldn't have that anyway if you filled it on up. You don't want any plant material above the alcohol line. And got a little anise hyssop flowers down there. This was whole anise hyssop with the flowers and the leaves. And yes, I would strain it when I get ready to, it's called decanting it. I would decant it when I'm ready to use it. Let's see, how long do oil infusions last? Okay, so we're going to talk about oils in just a minute. The short answer is, it depends. I'll talk about it when we get to oils, if that's okay, Laquetta, which we're going to be there in a minute. But I did want to say before I did this, while I was closing out on tinctures, I was going to try to do this. My scissors are down the way. But so another plant that you're going to be getting in your distribution is yarrow. I'm going to talk about the qualities of yarrow after. We're going to take a break in a little while, and then when we get back, we'll talk about some plants. But I picked this right out of my backyard and let it dry. So how did I let it dry? Now, my friend gave me these. You don't have to have these, but I love them. My friend, like, these are those things. Look at this. These are those things that you use like at a picnic to keep the bugs up out of your stuff. So she had a whole bunch of them and gave them to me. And I was like, oh, I already know what I'm gonna use this for. And because, you know, the air circulates through the bottom, I just was using it for collecting herbs. And plus it's cute. So anyway, I gathered my yarrow about, well, when did I gather this? Oh, it's been about 3 weeks, I think. And what's funny is when I got ready to prepare for this class, I was trying to grab as many things out of my apothecary that coincided with the plants that you all are actually going to get, so that you could see it, you know, like see it in action, you know, like this is anise hyssop in action. And I realized I didn't have any yarrow tincture and I didn't have any yarrow oil either. So I was like, okay, so it is time for me to make some. So just since I have you here, I figured I would just make it while I talk to you. So this is, like I said, my yarrow that that I picked right out of the backyard. And
Do you mind spelling that real quickly?
oh, Y-A-R-R-O-W, yarrow. And when you let it dry, now like I said, I could have made this fresh. You do not have to have dried herbs to make a tincture. You do not have to have dried herbs to make a tea. You do have to have dried herbs or dry-ish herbs at least to make an oil. But we'll get to that. So I didn't have to dry this out. I could have directly made it into tincture just by filling it up. But because sometimes you get excited and gather way more herbs than you can process in a time before they start to dry, I now have dry yarrow. So I could cut this up with my scissors. I don't have the scissors handy. So this is why herbalism is a forgiving, and a lot of times people want to, I shouldn't say people want to, a lot of times there's a lot of process wrapped around stuff and ways to make you feel like you're not doing it right, or you got to do it like this. I can't believe you're doing it like that. You don't have the right equipment. You're not an herbalist because you don't have this. Like, nope. This is like, we weren't out there with, scissors back in the day. We were just picking stuff, tearing it, putting it into our bottle and jars and letting it sit. So I am just going to, I do like to tear the stems can be used in this case, not with every plant. That's going to be something you want to check. Ooh, this smells good. Let me make this so y'all can see. So depending on your plant, I know for a fact that yarrow stem does have medicinal properties in it. So I'm including the stem. That's not going to be for every plant. You should make a note that what I'm talking about, what we're using for yarrow, these are called the aerial parts, A-R-I-E-L, aerial parts, which are the above ground parts. That means you can use your leaf, stem, and flowers. If you say, I'm using all the aerial parts. Some plants, like we'll talk about in a minute, like New England aster, you only use the flower. Or like calendula, you only use the flower. Some plants, we know we only use the leaves. I'm trying to think of one that we only use the leaves off the top of my head, because a lot of stuff you can use the flower as well. But so Andrika asked about where did my friend find the trace? I don't know, but I see everybody is coming to the rescue to let us know. Yes, Marshalls, TJ Maxx, department store values for less every day. I'm a Marshalls girl. It just was such a good practical use because, I don't really picnic enough to be using these for like, oh, let me break out with these when I'm serving my food, but I can use them for my medicine for sure, and I'll use them a lot. So let me see what else I want to say about, okay. Disadvantages of alcohol. Alcohol, remember earlier we talked about the mucilage or the slippery kind of quality that you want with your tea and for certain health situations. Alcohol doesn't do a good job of bringing that quality out. Alcohol won't get sticky and slippery like okra if you put an herb in it that would get slippery like that in water. Alcohol doesn't do that. Alcohol is not as good for extracting minerals, but it brings out the medicinal qualities. It's just something that you need to know, like nettles are high in minerals, chickweed, alfalfa, red clover. it's not that those plants shouldn't be made into an alcohol tincture, but you just need to know that the mineral part, the minerals are not going to be the best thing that's extracted with the alcohol. Another thing, of course, is if you're avoiding alcohol for any reason, if you have liver disease, allergies to alcohol, a history of alcoholism, or just typically are avoiding alcohol, if you're making something for children, you may not want to give them alcohol. So that would be a drawback to alcohol. And even though there are alcohol-based mushroom extractions, it's typically not the best for extracting mushroom goodness for the reasons we just talked about. How we talked about mushrooms do really well in a very long extraction with water. And so I have it filled up loosely here. This is dried, so I really didn't have to do this much. You can press it down to see how much you actually have. And that looks like about 1/4. So I'm gonna go ahead. Got my Everclear here. Oops. And I'm just gonna go on and fill it up. I might put some more in later, but of course, we're gonna be here all night. Make this a little quicker. Take this off. Alcohol is not going to eat up the tops to your caps. We're going to talk about with vinegar how it will eat up the tops to your caps. I like to sometimes just give it a little shake. Sometimes people shake it every day. Sometimes people shake it every week. Sometimes people shake it whenever they walk past it and see it and say, hey, I'm gonna shake my thing. So do whatever you want. But if it's something that is like fresh and kind of packed in there really tight, I probably would shake it every now and then, because you don't want there to be like a dry spot somehow in there. Like if it's packed so tight and the alcohol is not getting to it all. So you want to be sure it's all, covered or loose in the alcohol. And so then the last thing I'll do is, this is your friend. This is an herbalist's best friend. Masking tape and a Sharpie marker. Masking tape and a Sharpie marker. Label it, label it, label it. Let me tell you something. This is going to look just like this. It's going to look just like this after you have 1,700 jars of little brown liquids. You think you will remember it. You won't. I know that's not just me. So then I would put, this was from dried yarrow. And I grew that. So I'm putting the name of my little homestead here. And I used 75% alcohol. And I made it on July 20th, 2023. So I just wrote that on there. Do it as soon as you make it, because like I said, it's just easy to get caught up in what you're doing and come back and go, now what was that? What did I make? And then I just put the little name on there, and then this is ready to go on the shelf for 6 to 8 weeks, and then it'll be ready to use. Voila. Laquetta asks, are there other extraction methods besides alcohol? So we already talked about water as an extraction method. This is alcohol, and I'm going to do a time check before I go into vinegar. And you could use glycerin also. I don't typically use a lot of glycerin, so I don't have it here. You could extract herbs with glycerin. You can extract them with vinegar. You can extract herbs with witch hazel and make like facial toner. You can extract with alcohol. I've seen it done with wine. Did you have something in mind that you were curious about?
Oh, because you said like for kids or people like who couldn't have alcohol, so like to make a tincture for somebody like that.
Okay, excellent. So let me do a time check and I will address, I want to talk to that specific question. It is 7:14. Oh, we're doing good, kind of. I talk so much, but I do want to say that the next thing I would be talking about is vinegar. So I'm gonna move into vinegars, and vinegars are, I make a lot of vinegars, and vinegars are what I use for, well, there's two things. I use vinegar as a non-alcoholic alternative. So I make an elderberry elixir that's alcohol based, and then I make an elderberry infused vinegar that I then add enough honey to make it, it's really tart and really sweet. Like you wouldn't take it by the spoonful, it's a little too much. You would definitely add it to your tea or hot water to take it. But I make vinegar based extractions as a non-alcoholic option. That's one of the things I do a lot. Let's see. And I know that was just a brief overview. Like I said, we'd have to have a whole class on like tinctures and all of that. And I hope we do. I really hope there's a level 102 herbalism class. So the
You
next
said there
thing,
were 2 uses for vinegar. The first one was non-alcoholic alternative, but you said you had 2 uses for vinegar.
oh, okay, thank you. The other one is not with vinegar, but you can, you can make a syrup, and a syrup is equal parts organic sugar and your water or your tea. So it's so sweet that I tend to not make that very much, but you could make an elderberry syrup that was just equal parts, like you make a really, really strong tea, and say you had 4 cups of tea. You would add 2 cups of sugar to that and let it boil down on the stove until it equaled 2 cups of tea and 2 cups of sugar, and then it's going to be like a syrup that you could literally use on your pancakes if you wanted to, but that would also be a way to make a non-alcoholic version. I would always add that to tea to sweeten it. It's a great way to sweeten your tea. If you're going to use honey anyway, why not use elderberry honey or Monarda bee balm honey or wild cherry bark honey for a cough, so you could make a medicinal. You could also make a medicinal infused honey without any water too. So if you used, when I make Laquetta said, so not a cough syrup. The reason why you use so much sugar is so that remember I said shelf stable, so it won't go bad. Now, you don't have to use that much sugar if you're going to keep it in the refrigerator, but it'll vary how long it'll last, but it'll usually last a whole season, a couple months anyway. So you could make a cough syrup that's not that sweet, but had enough honey, your wild cherry bark, lemon, onions, garlic, all the things, and you could make a cough syrup, but I would store that in the refrigerator so it doesn't go bad. Because vinegar doesn't go bad. That's one, and I should have said that. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Vinegar doesn't go bad. Alcohol doesn't go bad. Honey doesn't go bad. And if you add enough cane sugar, that syrup will not go bad on the shelf. That means it can stay outside the refrigerator. But if you're going to refrigerate it anyway, then you have a little wiggle room with how much water you're going to have in there, because the refrigerator is going to help it stay fresh. It might only last for that particular cold or flu. Like I said, it may not stay fresh for more than a week or two, or it might stay fresh throughout the winter, 3 months. You just have to keep an eye on it. Make sure it's not growing any mold on top. So you can play around with it. It lasts a pretty long time in the fridge, though. It just depends on how you formulate it. That's some decisions that you'll have to make when you're trying to make your formula. What do you want it to do? How long do you need it to last? Okay. Are there any other questions? Am I moving too fast? Is it too much? We have a break coming up. So I just want to be sensitive, though. I can go. I know I can go. So I want to be sure folks are going with me. not stand, run, like, hey, I don't know where she went. So.
We're here. I am.
Okay. Okay. Come on, now here we go. So what we're going to do quickly, I'm going to try to do this in 10 minutes, and then we're going to take a 10-minute break, and we're going to move into our plants that are in our kit. I'm going to talk a little bit about herbal vinegars. Because I love herbal vinegars. I didn't realize vinegar, when I first started herbalism and started making my tinctures, and I mean, I have a whole apothecary, like literally, them wall units you can buy off of Amazon. I got 3 of them full of these here mason jars. So I have medicine, and I like the fact that it never goes bad. I like the fact that I can keep a wide variety. Like, I don't have people asking me for certain things very often, but I can still make it and keep it, and it'll stay. But I use vinegars a lot. And I really love vinegars. Let's see. Vinegar in and of itself, it's really good at pulling out minerals. And it's good, it helps our body take in those minerals. So if you have an herb like nettles, which has so many vitamins and minerals, that's something you might say, oh, I'm going to use a vinegar for this because I want all of those minerals. And like I said, vinegar helps our body to take in the minerals. That's one of the reasons why vinegar, I don't know if we knew this or not, but you know how we know stuff and don't know stuff. But that's one of the reasons vinegar is added to like collard greens or soup or beans, because it helps draw out the nutrients and the minerals in those when you're cooking them. That's dope. And vinegar tends to be relatively inexpensive. I mean, it's cheaper than alcohol. It's more expensive than water, of course, but it's cheaper than alcohol. Vinegar does not go bad. Like I said before, vinegar doesn't go bad. Now, I tend to use like Bragg's or whoever's organic apple cider vinegar. That's all I use for my vinegars. I don't use that white vinegar for nothing except cleaning my house, clean it in my laundry or cleaning my house. And you can still infuse the white vinegar. This is a slight sidebar. You can take the white vinegar, you can infuse it with pine needles, cedar, orange peels, lemon peels, get that little cheap vinegar from Kroger or wherever, and put all your good herbs in it, bay leaves, anything, if you're into the spiritual properties or how to bless your house, put them in there, let it sit for about 2 weeks and make a great cleaning vinegar. And I use like half water, half vinegar, or whatever you feel comfortable with. I use that in a spray bottle for my countertops, for my tables, for the bathroom, for that general everyday cleaning. I'll hit it with bleach when I need to, and I really try to keep bleach out of the environmental systems. But that herbal vinegar is nice. You can add a few drops of essential oil to it, like some orange or lemon or eucalyptus essential oil or some tea tree oil, which is great for germ fighting. And make your own out of that white vinegar. Okay? Or if you let your clothes sit in the laundry too long and they sour, little half cup of white vinegar. Don't use any more expensive laundry detergent to wash them again. Just plain laundry with white vinegar will take that away. Anyway, sidebar. For the medicine, I use apple cider vinegar. And vinegar, again, is great for folks that are avoiding alcohol. It draws out minerals more effectively than alcohol. It, in particular, draws out flavor and heat. So like hot, spicy, hot pepper vinegars or garlic in vinegar, it really brings out the flavors really good. And it's great for using like as a culinary. So it's great for getting it. One of you said earlier when you were testifying about this is a way of life. And vinegar you can make your own salad dressing. You can, like I said, use it in soup, use it in stew. It really has a good way of life quality to it. You can get it in the rotation. You can introduce medicinal vinegars in a lot of ways, especially salad dressings or, there's a lot of stuff. Let's see. For fire smell too, white vinegar. Oh, white vinegar. Oh, I didn't know that. So you're talking about if there has been smoke damage or a fire has happened, or maybe if you just went camping and sat too long at the campfire, it'll take the fire smell.
Yep.
Oh, look at that. That's good to know. Thank you. So let's see. Another good thing about vinegar is it's acidic. So it keeps any microbial growth away. Now you can use fresh or dried herbs in vinegar. I have made fire cider, which is a spicy, infused, health tonic type vinegar. I make it every single year by the gallons, and I use a variety of fresh and dried things like lemon slices, orange slices, lime slices, burdock root, you name it. I mean, it's really power packed. Fresh hot peppers, I've used dried pepper flakes, and then I just put the top on and let it sit. And I've never, knock wood, never had a batch go bad or mold or anything. So vinegar is really good at keeping microbial growth in check. If you did see mold or any signs of decay, of course you would compost it or you would discard it. But that has not happened to me. I have had vinegars last, I have this, so this is not a sidebar, but it is a sidebar because this is vinegar, but I made it myself. And that's another class. This is Honeycrisp apple vinegar that I made myself 2 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. And it just sits. And it just, so the acid level, so I guess that's just I keep repeating, is a long way to say it doesn't go bad. So if you were in the last class, we made this. I made this as we were talking about our different backyard herbs. So this was our herb infused vinegar with everything from burdock to catnip to, I don't know what else I put in there, mullein, a bunch of stuff. Only thing you need to remember about your vinegar, again, it's the same ratio. So this was fresh plant material, which meant I filled it all the way up. Or if it was dried, you could go with 1/4 or 3/4. Only thing you want to remember is with vinegar is because of the acid, it will eat away at your metal top. You can use they're the kind of tops that are I guess they're plastic that this won't happen to, but otherwise just put a piece of wax paper between your herbs. Isn't that pretty? Look at that. And then this is sat for a month. I find vinegars are typically ready in about 2 weeks, but you don't have to strain it until you're ready to use it. If you use it, you just don't want any plant material to be sitting up in the air. So like if I needed about, say I wanted to make salad dressing and I poured off half of this, I just want to make sure there's no plant stuff sticking out. So I'm probably going to strain it and compost the plant material. So I could strain this and then, add olive oil and other salt, pepper, maybe some maple syrup or honey, and maybe some fresh lemon juice, and whip it up in the blender or get my whisk out and make a nice salad dressing. One note about vinegar. You can make a quick, okay, I said 2 weeks for vinegar. You can treat it almost like a tea and do a hot infusion. So if it's a hot infusion, that means we're going to heat up the vinegar on the stove and add our ingredients to it. You can do that if you're in a rush. You can do that as an option just because you want to, and put your herbs in there, whatever you decide that you want to make for your infused vinegar. A good one is thyme. We're going to talk about thyme. It's going to be in your kit. Thyme, elderberry, ginger, calendula, like think of a cough syrup blend or whatever. So you would infuse your vinegar, and the thing you need to watch for is if you take that top off, those vinegar vapors will burn. They'll burn your eyes, they'll burn your nose. So you don't want to ever say like, oh, let me see how this smells. You'll be able to smell it in the house, but you have to watch the vinegar vapor. But you can do a hot infusion with vinegar. And once you've done your hot infusion, just like a tea, you can strain it, bottle it, and it wouldn't have the plant material in it, of course, and you could bottle it like that and it would not go bad. And you could use that as a non-alcoholic alternative. And I add honey to it when I'm ready to give it to somebody, like in their tea or in a cup of hot water or cold water. There's a whole section of vinegar-based non-alcoholic drinks, mocktails, and just good little sippy sippies that can be made out of vinegar. So consider using vinegar if you are trying to avoid alcohol, or if you just want to, experiment with it. Natalie said, how long to heat, and do you also put it in boiling water? So when I make a vinegar extraction, I usually place my dried herbs in the pot, like a big soup pot, and then cover them with vinegar, and I turn it on. Do I let it come to a boil? If I let it come to a boil, I turn it down right away and then just let it simmer for 20 minutes. I don't let it just keep boiling, and I don't add any water to it. And I'll let it simmer about 20 or 30 minutes. And usually, just to be on the safe side, because there are 9 times out of 10 going to be some roots in there too. And we already said roots need 20 minutes to simmer and 20 to 30 minutes to sit. So I'll just take it off the heat, leave the top on it, and let it cool down by itself. Okay. Okay. How much do you take? So vinegar, I usually take it about by the tablespoon, but never just drink it because it's vinegar. It takes my breath away if I just try to take a tablespoon of vinegar. So I'll add it to a cup of water, cold water, or hot tea, but I usually will add about a tablespoonful. But you want to do it to taste because you may be like, oh, that's too, I don't like that. So, play around with it. But I'd say around a tablespoon is maybe the dose for that. And you want to be careful because vinegar, you always want it in water or tea. Or I don't think you want to take it straight, but you don't want it to eat at the enamel of your teeth and be rough on your throat or your mouth in any way. So I take it in water. Okay. We are going to take pause for a break. I will cover oils when we get back because I stand out. And if you have any questions, maybe we can quickly do them when we come back, but there will be time for Q&A at the end too. So I'm going to drink some water. I've been talking a lot. And we'll be back at 7:45 to go over infused oils and then move into some plants. Okay?
Alrighty.
I'll try to put on some music, but we'll see.
You're on mute, Lottie, if you're trying to play your music.
I don't have it set up right. I'm not.
Okay.
Thank you, but
The strangers that came to me on this morning, as I awoke to greet the coming dawn, the sun was hardly peeping through the garden. It felt that with everything I was then I wish that I would come back as a flower, as a flower, as a flower. How I wish that I could come back as a flower, as a flower. To spread the sweetness of love, to spread the sweetness of love. The dew had finished making love to me.
it, that's it, that's it. She's just so funky, that's it, that's it, baby. Hey, mom, what your mama gonna say? You finally let your body like this guy. Does anyone wanna go waltzing in the garden? Does anyone wanna go dance up on the roof? Does anyone wanna go waltzing in the garden? Does anyone wanna go dance up on the roof? Does anyone wanna go waltzing in the garden? Does anyone wanna go dance up on the roof? Does anyone wanna go waltzing in the garden? Does anyone wanna go dance up on the roof? On the town, sequence get down. Climb those stairs, do that ballroom in the air. Get to poppin'. Does anyone wanna go waltzing in the garden? Does anyone wanna go dance up on the roof? Does anyone wanna go waltzing in the garden? Does anyone wanna go dance up on the roof? Coming up, you know. Does anyone wanna go waltzing in the garden? Does anyone wanna go dance up on the roof? If you dare, dream of yesterday. In the air, do a step with breath, a step, get your pump back. Does anyone wanna go waltzing in the garden? Does anyone wanna go dance up on the roof? Do-do-do-ba-do-da-do-do. So-do-do-do-do-do-do. Dee-ba-do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do. Skee-lee-dee. Do-do-do-do-do-do. Do-ba-do-do-do-do. Beep-beep-bo-be-da-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. Do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Sa-da-na-na-na. Dee-dee-do. You can be what you want to be. Come and waltz like me. Oh, I'm stepping money. Boom, get the pocket. Does anyone wanna go waltzing in the garden? Does anyone wanna go dance up on the roof? Does anyone wanna go waltzing in the garden? Does anyone wanna go dance up on the roof? Coming up, get it on. Does anyone wanna go waltzing in the garden? Does anyone wanna go dance up on the roof? No one stays in downtown these days. Country call, got us work and all. Oh, weekend, let me recommend what to do when your heart is light or blue. You get stepping. Does anyone wanna go waltzing in the garden? Does anyone wanna go dance on the roof? Dee-doo-doo-dee-dee. Dee-doo-dee-dee-doo-doo. Do-la-la-la-la-la. Do-la-la-la-la-la. Don't-dee-dee-dee-dee-doo. Dee-dee-dee-dee-doo. Dee-dee-da-da-ba-da-da-da-da.
All right, okay. Well, from a nice little break. Oh yes, Aziza, I will put the links to the playlist in the slides. I made the mistake of, since the first class was public, I used some, regular old songs, and, you can't be putting regular old songs on YouTube. So I need to be mindful of that for public things that are going to go from a private class, a private sort of Zoom setting to a public space like YouTube. But tonight we don't have that because it won't go to YouTube. It's going to stay with y'all. So yeah, we had some Al Jarreau, And the first song was by Sarita, who was Stevie Wonder's wife for a minute. So it's on the album, The Secret Life of Plants. So I love that song, Come Back as a Flower. Okay, we're gonna quickly talk about infused oils. So one thing to keep in mind, our skin is a porous and breathing organ of our body, which makes it a great way to take in medicine. It is also, you have to keep in mind, when, what we put on our body, and it's a sidebar, but not really, because the more I learned about skin as a means to take in medicine, the more I started to question, well, what am I putting on my body all day long, like in the form of my laundry detergent, like fabric softeners, like the things that lay on my skin for hours and hours and hours. And I ended up, really revamping my laundry routine for some more environmentally conscious choices because, especially stuff like fabric softener, those have a lot of endocrine disruptors. Even, we know our hair products, it just really highlighted it for me when I started making salves and oils, and I could feel the results, you know what I mean? Like I'd put it on my back for my sore muscles or put it on my knee, or I'd give a catnip salve for my daughter's menstrual cramps, and she'd put it across her pelvis and, across her back and put like a heating pad on it and lay down. It's like, okay, this is really going in our system. So it just made me think differently about things. So oil. Ooh, I got quite a few here to show and tell about. First thing I'll say, essential oils are not the same as infused oils. So I'm going to be talking about infused oils. I'm going to be talking about, just like with our vinegar, our water, or our alcohol, putting a fresh or dried herb into a large quantity, relatively speaking, and letting it sit long enough for the good medicinal properties to be drawn out of it. And essential oil is made using a distillery, much like a still, like where they make liquor, but it uses pounds and pounds of plant material, and it's placed inside of it's usually like a copper, big old copper still with water, and there's ways to cool it down and heat it up to where the little tiny volatile oil that's, say, inside of the rose petal collects into a tube and comes on down and goes into your bottle. So when you're using essential oils, which I do, but I do use them with care. For one, they're very intense. And for two, the way they're made is really intense. Like I said, it takes pounds and pounds of rose petals to make rose essential oil. And not that that doesn't have its place, but it's just something to be conscious of, that when it's an essential oil, that came from that distillery process where they steamed and heated up a large amount of plants in order for the essential oils to vaporize and condense into the little drops and come down that tube and fill those little bottles. You could do a rose petal tincture or a rose petal infused. We haven't talked about witch hazel yet, but it's like in there with vinegar and water. You can use that as an herbal, a way to extract things that are good for the skin. So you can make your rose water. You can make your own. So that's just something to keep in mind. So we're not going to be talking about essential oils. We're going to be talking about infused oils. the first thing you want to remember is you don't want water in your oils. That's the way you get mold in your oil. Oil and water don't mix. So we always want to use dried plants. Dried, they don't have to be dried to the bone. Now you can do what's called a wilt, letting them wilt for a couple of days so that initial, it depends on the herb. You know, some herbs are juicier than others. You know, it depends on how they're made. Like purslane is a succulent. You know what I mean? Like it's really kind of juicy, kind of meaty leaf to it. Whereas pine needles don't have as much moisture, and they may not need to be bone dry before you make it into an oil. But, you know, you're going to have to be sure as much as possible that it is dry. We haven't talked about St. John's wort. That's one exception to being totally dry. Another exception is when you try to make dandelion flower oil. You're really going to have to make it as soon as you can, because otherwise all the dandelions turn into puffballs. The drier they get. Goldenrod does the same thing. Like the more it dries, it turns into, it's like, that's a message to the plant, like, we got to go to seed. We've been cut. It's time to, you know, so there are ways to still do it. I've made plenty of goldenrod oil. You just got to pick it right before it blooms. So those are some considerations, but mainly dry. I tend to use the most olive oil. Again, this is kind of like the alcohol. Get the best you can, you know, get what you can afford, but don't think it has to be, you know, like blessed by unicorns and only available in the forest beyond, you know, like not all, you don't need all that. This is good stuff here, Trader Joe's. I use olive oil a lot because it's readily available and it's relatively inexpensive for an oil. It does soak in nicely. I mean, it's good for the skin. It soaks in nicely. There are other oils you can use. I also use, I do use coconut oil. Coconut oil can be nice because it has like a light, it's like almost what I would call a dry oil. It doesn't seem to stay on the surface of the skin and be as shiny and oily as long as some of the other oils. I do like using coconut, and it doesn't go bad. These don't, well, olive oil also doesn't tend to go bad. Someone asked earlier about how long oils stay good. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what makes them stay good longer. But in general, I've had good results with coconut oil, not going rancid, and olive oil, not going rancid, but I still try to use them within a year. I mean, if they're still good at the end of that year, then I might push it. But I do, you know, there's a certain aroma that comes off a rancid oil. So you can smell, use the smell test to know when your oil or your salve isn't good anymore. And of course, if you ever see mold or anything that's questionable or it just smells off, then I would get rid of it. You can use almond oil, of course. You can use jojoba oil. Now look, let me tell you something. This, the price tag is still on here. This was like $28. You know, so what I would probably do, this is where it's nice to formulate. You know what I mean? Like we can use part this and a little bit of this so that we get the benefits, but we're being budget friendly. Almond oil, sesame oil, sunflower oil, avocado oil. That's another expensive one, but it's a lovely oil. Now, I don't have the time, nor do I have it right in front of me, there's like a chart, like certain things soak in better than others. So it depends on kind of what you're using it for. Like, is it for a massage? You probably want it to be a lightweight oil. Is it for making a salve, you know, a first aid salve? Well, maybe you want it to be a little heavier, you know, so there is, you know, preference, and there are some qualities, but I've gotten really, really far with plain old olive oil and coconut oil. And sometimes I'll use sunflower oil because I found it at Trader Joe's and I said, why not? I'm about to try it. The same thing goes with your measurements as far as 1/4 dried herbs. I love to infuse, so there are many ways to infuse your herbs. You can do what's called a cold infusion. I don't have a cold infusion here. That's basically just what it says. You take your dry plant material, you would cover it with your olive oil, and you would just put the top on it and let it sit in a dark place, like a cabinet or your apothecary closet. And it doesn't have to be pitch black. I mean, it could be just like the dark part of, you know, your kitchen counter or whatever. And you're gonna let that sit for six weeks or so. Me and my granddaughter, we picked fresh dandelion leaves, violets and violet leaves, plantain, all the stuff that just came out in the spring. I threw it in a colander, washed it, threw it in a colander, and I set it in the refrigerator. And it was, you know, it's kind of a balancing act between if it's gonna mold or is it gonna dry. So you don't want a lot in there, like just one layer. But I just let it dry in the refrigerator, and it didn't get, you know, crumbly dry, but it was definitely dry enough to where then I filled the little mason jar with our dandelion leaf, our plantain and violets, and covered it with olive oil and just let that sit. And that makes a great all-purpose first aid salve for like itchy things, owies, anytime you just need, you know, like a burn or just, you know, some soothing qualities, an insect bite or a sunburn or whatever. I mean, I wouldn't put too much oil on a sunburn though. But so that was just one way to dry them out. And that was a cold infusion. We just covered it with oil and let it sit. The usual way, two usual ways I make my infused herbs, however, is crock pot. Crock pot is excellent for making infused oil because it can just stay on warm and it won't fry your herbs because you don't want to fry your herbs, you know. You can do it in a crock pot to where you pour all the oil in the crock pot and put the herbs in the crock pot. But I find that sometimes the crock pots still get kind of hot, even on warm. So what I do with the crock pot is it's a water bath. You would put a towel in the bottom of it, fill it with water, and then you would put your mason jar full of your herbs and oil with the top off. You know, you don't want the water to come up so high because you don't want water in your herbs, but let it come up to about here and then let it set on warm. Let all the little babies be in the hot tub on warm in the glass jar. You can do it like that in the oven also, with your oven as low as it'll go. In a pan, you're gonna pour some water in it, the same thing, and you can set your jars in there like that. And I let it go for a couple hours, you know, about 2 hours. Just check on it. Sometimes I turn the oven off and then just let that sit, you know, go till overnight. And the other way I like to do it is with a double boiler on top of the stove. Now, if you don't have a double boiler, those two pots that sit inside of each other beautifully, and you put the hot water in the bottom, you can just make one with two pots or even a Pyrex measuring glass, just something that'll hang over the edge and it won't fall down in the pot. And you put the water in the bottom and I put my oil and my plants on top, because that way I can control the heat. because you never want it to get hotter than, you can put your finger in it still, even though it might be very warm, it doesn't burn. You don't want your herbs to fry. So you can then, test it with your double boiler, you turn it off, play with it that way. Laquetta wanted to know, could you use that oil for dogs? What would you use it for? Would you use it for like their coat or for their feet or for a scratch? I think you could use a little. I mean, dog systems, I find, I haven't done a lot with herbalism for pets, but what I have, the little bit I have, is that their systems are really sensitive. So I would think an oil would be nice. I wouldn't do anything stronger than that, maybe a little bit. But I am not as well versed in herbalism with pets.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering. I mainly I use like coconut oil on them, like just straight coconut oil, like after a bath and stuff to help with itching and whatever they might go through. But the oil that you spoke of, the salve that you said that you and your granddaughter made, I was wondering about that because the herbs, I'm like, that sound like it might be soothing for them, but I wanted to ask.
Mm-hmm. And it might be, like I said, I just don't know enough to say 100% confidently. I mean, those are really gentle herbs like violets. I would say if it was like with violets or chickweed, plantain, those are still gentle herbs that I would think would be fine. But like I said, I haven't done it before. Now, if my dog had a scratch, I'm looking at my dog right now, would I put it on him? I would. Because, I'm like, I got all this stuff here. Let me just see. And of course, he's going to try to lick it all off. As soon as I try to put it on his feet or anything, he tries to lick it all off. But I mean, I have been known to slap a thing or two on him. But let's see. The other thing about oils is you can use it to make a salve. And that's when you would want, we have our beeswax pellets here that you can buy at the health food store. You can order them online and they're just little pellets. I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, little pellets of beeswax. And you would combine, it's one tablespoon of pellets per cup of oil. If you were going to heat it together, and then that's going to give you a salve. And you can make it thicker if you want it to be like a lip balm. You would, of course, add more because you don't want it to melt out of the tube. Or you could make it, really oily. So I know that's a really quick fly through of oils. Let's see, I've had them. You can add vitamin E oil to your oils, like when you get ready to use them, and that'll slow down the oxidization process, which makes them last longer. Certain herbs, if you're using an herb that has microbial, antifungal, anti-infective qualities, those oils are going to last longer because of the properties of the herb that's in them. What else can I say quickly? I don't know. I think I'm going to stop there on oils unless folks have some small specific questions so we can get to the plants. Another thing. Well, there are things you can add like menthol. Think of like your Vicks Vapor Rub. You can make a nice chest rub with the oil. Like oils aren't just for making into a salve. You can make a nice chest rub, and you can add like menthol or things that anything that opens your pores helps the oil go in further and deeper. So like if you're making a pain salve, if you're making anything that you want to kind of get to the bones, to the muscles, then you might want to include like menthol or hot pepper, capsaicin. That helps draw it in more, as well as warm it up and bring circulation to that area. Yes. I think that's a good stopping point because you all have been given a lot to take in, and it's not going to be the last time we have these conversations. But yeah, I think so. I think that's good. Unless folks have specific questions, like I said, about the techniques. And I think I already mentioned this really briefly, the witch hazel as one last technique. This is so good if you treat it like a tea. You can put rose petals, chamomile, plantain, any of your, I would use dried herbs. And I just do a cold infusion. I just cover it, let it sit cold. I don't heat up the witch hazel. And you can make your own face toner, like, or any, for your skin externally. It's really good. Like plantain is great for your skin. Calendula is a great wound healer. Anything that's beneficial to the skin. Think of acne, think of oily skin, think of, anything that would be soothing. You can also use witch hazel for an external extraction. And it's nice and cooling. And I like to do that too.
So Lottie, a question about the teas. Now
Yes.
you were talking about when you boil the tea and then you let it steep and then you let it sit for 30 minutes. So if you reheat it like the next day, is that starting to, I guess, kill the medicinal properties, or when you reheat, do you lose
No.
any of that?
No, that's actually a good idea. Like if you want your tea hot the next day, yes, by all means, you can heat it back up. Even if like some herbs, like the marshmallow root, things that need cold water, it's okay to heat them up after they've been cold. So yes, it's okay to heat it up the next day. You won't be, if you were to just boil it and boil it and boil it, then it may start to disintegrate or not be as strong, but just heating it back up is fine.
Okay. You have any more questions? Or you said you were getting into the plants next? Lottie?
Yeah, I'm gonna be pulling up the slides and going bye-bye. You're just gonna hear my voice. So you can look at the pictures of these plants. Let me just grab my notes here. And let me find my. Let me go get my slides back up here. Just 1 second. Okay, so yeah, we just went over tea, tinctures, oils, vinegars, and toner. Check. Now, like I said, you all will be the lucky recipients of a flat of plants at the end of this class. And all of them have some medicinal properties. Some are sort of like falling out of use because whether they're safety precautions or just historically they were used more by indigenous communities or just used a really long time ago. And I'm only going to speak to those that I have personally worked with. So this isn't the total of the plants that you're going to be getting in your pack. So the first one I'm going to talk about here is anise hyssop, which is that tincture that we had earlier. So what's interesting about it is, despite the name, it is neither anise, like star anise, or is it hyssop? Hyssop is a whole nother plant, and anise is another plant. Now, it is a member of the mint family, and it does have that licoricey taste like anise. So, you know, it's just one of those things you have to learn all the ins and outs about. It is a really great plant for respiratory needs, for cough, cold, sore throat, flu. It is an expectorant. So that means it is going to help you to bring up mucus and congestion in your lungs and in the respiratory system. It is soothing to the throat. It is a cough suppressant. And it really helps ease the pain of, you know, when you get those coughs, the coughs where you cough so much to your chest is just hurting. It can help with those kinds of chest colds. It's also what's called a diaphoretic, which means it opens up your pores for heat to escape, which means it's going to be helpful with reducing fever. And you can use the leaves and the flowers. And the essential oil that is in this plant has a mild sedative action. So it's like an overall relaxing. Let's see. It's also good for digestion. It helps to prevent excess gas in the intestines. It can help relieve cramping and help for the expulsion of gas. It is slightly bitter, so that means it'll help with bile production and with your digestive system overall. And I mean, it's just, I think it's really underrated. It's also, it can go crazy, even though it's in the mint, it's not a mint, but it's like a mint and sort of like in the mint family, and it grows like crazy like a mint. But you can make a whole lot of things with it. So if nothing else, dry it out, share it with your friends. You can, it's antibacterial, antiviral, antifungal. So when you hear those kinds of words, you should be thinking like, oh, I can use that internally, but I could also use that externally. Because if it's antifungal, that's good for candida or yeast rashes or irritations of the skin, you know, things that think about, always start to think, can I use it internally and or externally? Let's see, let me make sure. Yes, Nicole, that is the name, the Latin name of the anise hyssop that we're talking to right now. Agastache. I don't even know how to say it. I got a stash. That's what it seems. I'll never forget it. That's what it looks like to me. The next plant that we're going to talk about is, oh, I just want to say also, and again, when you think about using it externally, that can be as an infused oil, that could be in the witch hazel as a skin toner, or you can just use it in your bathtub. You could use it in the bathtub dried, or you could brew a really strong tea and just pour that into your bathtub also. So, you know, that'd be good for sunburn. That would be good for like athlete's feet. I already said candida. So anise hyssop is underrated. You guys, we need to start a fan club. All right. The next plant that you're going to get in your kit is bee balm. And whew, I love bee balm. First of all, I just love how interesting the flowers are. They just remind me of little, I don't know, pin cushions or something with all these little lavender, purple beauty things hanging off of them. But it's also known as wild bergamot. It's also known as monarda. This plant has the same quality. It's the same oil. It's called thymol, Thymol, which is like in thyme, the herb thyme also. It's a strong antiseptic. It is great for cold, flu, upper respiratory problems, gas, diarrhea, nausea, fever, whooping cough, skin problems and wounds. It tastes like somewhere between oregano and mint. Like if you pull those leaves off and chew them, they're like peppery. It's got a great little peppery flavor that I think, like if you dried the leaves, I think you could really incorporate that into your seasonings as well. Like think about like oregano and thyme and like in a salad, like making infused vinegar out of bee balm. I've made honey, bee balm infused honey also. You can use it as a mouthwash. It's good for sore throat, toothaches, mouth sores. And if you have sinus congestion, if you chew those leaves, I mean, it will clear out your sinuses. It's not peppery like horseradish. I'm not saying it's gonna like hit you over the head with, you know, its pepperiness, but it definitely has that warming quality to it. So again, when we're thinking about a plant that has those qualities, I just mentioned a whole lot of ways it could be used internally, but also you think about it, it would be great in a bath for sore, tired, achy muscles or for a foot soak. You can also use it to slow bleeding, like if someone had a wound, you could use it as a soak, you know, for, you could use it as a soak, like for a sprained ankle or a sprained wrist or anything where you want, you know, to give that pain relief and relief from spasms too. Like anything that relieves gas is usually an antispasmodic, which means it's helping with those spasms in your stomach or in your, a sprain is nothing, you know, muscle spasms happen in that too. You could also take those little blossoms and sprinkle them over a salad. It will spread, but I mean, it's really I just really appreciate that herb a whole lot. The next one I'm gonna talk a little bit about is echinacea here at the bottom, or cone flower. And oh, I want to say with the bergamot, I didn't mention, you can use the flowers and the leaves. The stems can be included, but they're not, you know, as spicy or aromatic or peppery as the leaves. So I would just use the leaves and the flowers. The root is not used on those, either of those two plants, the anise hyssop or the bee balm. Sure, yes, for a vaginal steam or a yoni steam, these are great herbs for that as well. Laquetta was asking that if you wonder why I just popped out with that out of nowhere, but I was trying to monitor the chat a little bit. So the next one is echinacea, which is really popular. I mean, a lot of people have heard about echinacea. You can use the flower, the leaves, and the roots. Now, the roots need at least 2 years before they're ready to harvest. So this is a plant. So a lot of these, you know, you're going to plant your garden and you get all excited, you get your one little echinacea flower, and don't run out there and cut it off and throw it in a jar and put some alcohol on top of it. You may want to wait for it to spread a little bit and establish itself. The root is the most potent part of the echinacea. And you'll know you get a good batch of echinacea when you chew on that root and it makes your tongue go numb or tingly. The flower will do it too, but just not as much. The root is the most potent part. Echinacea is an immune system modulator. So the modulator means it stimulates and suppresses the immune system as necessary. This is what's so amazing about plants. Like, how do it do that? How does it do that? How does it do that? But it does it. So it modulates the immune system. It modulates inflammation, because inflammation does have its place in healing. And we can talk more about that I know inflammation is also a sign of illness or disease, but it does have a place in healing. It promotes flow from the lymph glands, stimulates the lymph glands. It promotes salivation. Like I said, if you chew on it, it is going to make your mouth water. It helps with wound healing, helps with healing infections internally and externally. You can use the tea. I would say until your echinacea is up and booming and you have all that you want, this is one that I would keep as a tea on hand from a reputable source, whether you order it in bulk or get the tea bags. If that's all you can get the tea bags and put them in your first aid kit, because it's great as a gargle. It's great for toothaches. It's great for bleeding gums. And, you know, some people try to use it preventatively, but it's best used at the onset of getting sick, because it's going to turn up that immune system real quick, the white blood cells, and tell everybody, let's go. You know, it's not as good preventively. But the reason why I say you want to put it in your first aid kit is I have recommended this and had experience with like a spider bite, a venomous bite. You can take the tea internally, and I also recommend putting the tea bag on the bite, or, you know, if you have to make a little pouch of the tea herbs after you've done it, and you treat a venomous bite like a spider bite internally and externally. And echinacea is good for that. It's good for anything that's like hot and red, like those sometimes when you get bitten by an insect. Let's see. Oop, I'm sorry. Oh, that's what I meant to do. I meant to do that. Okay, so the next one I want to talk about is New England aster. And it is my hope and prayer that we get to harvest some New England aster, because, honey, let me tell you, at Keep Growing Detroit, they have some New England aster growing. And Tefira has already said I can come and harvest it, and I'd love it if we could all harvest it, or somehow we take advantage of this beautiful flower. We only use the flower. It is a top tier respiratory herb. This herb is good for asthma, and it's good for, this is not to say it's instead of an inhaler, but I have known people that use it regularly and have reduced their need for an inhaler. It's good with cold or heat triggered coughing or asthma. And sometimes folks with asthma get like what has been described as a quivery feeling in their chest. Sometimes that might mean it's about to jump off, or they might have it all the time, or have some shortness of breath that could turn into spasms. New England aster is a gentle diaphoretic. It has a calming effect. It's good for the upper and lower respiratory system. It's decongestant, antispasmodic. It's good with seasonal allergies and colds. And like I said, it releases lung tension. And it's really, I mean, I use it in my respiratory blends all the time. And along with mullein, between New England aster and mullein, these are ones that I really feel strongly about, especially given air quality as it is right now, and the prevalence of asthma in our communities, and how our respiratory health has been impacted by environmental impacts, you know, the factories and all other things. I really strongly suggest having these in abundance growing everywhere. And it is used as a tincture. So, I mean, you could make a tea out of it. The flowers don't dry very well. So whatever you're gonna do with it is gonna be done with the fresh flower. And that's why I end up making it into a tincture. I haven't made it into a vinegar. And I'd like to talk to someone about it, making it into a glyceride, because I'm thinking with kids, you know, I usually tend to use mullein with kids. I mean, I would not be opposed to drop doses of New England aster with children, especially for asthma, just because, I mean, I just really think the benefit outweighs the little bit of alcohol, but that's my belief. Everybody doesn't think like that, and that's fine. The next one we're going to talk about is our yarrow that we bottled up there. And yarrow is another great respiratory herb. Now, unlike yarrow, so New England aster is not very aromatic. It doesn't have a strong fragrance to it. I'm back on New England aster for just a minute. Some years are better than others. As with all plants, some are more potent in some years than others. And the way you know it with New England aster is the flowers will be sticky when you gather them. They'll just be kind of sticky, but it doesn't have a strong smell. And the reason I say that is because I'm moving on to yarrow and our bee balm that are highly aromatic. And with the aromatic plants that have those strong aromas, those are the ones that you'll start to notice that I'm saying, like internal use and external use. You know, they have a lot, the strong aroma is an indicator of their essential, those volatile oils. So yarrow is a respiratory herb. It's great for high fevers. It's a great diaphoretic, again, opens up the body to release the heat. It reduces mucus, congestion. It'll help you sweat out a cold or a fever. But it's also good for veins, the vascular system, any kind of inflammation that has to do with circulation, getting circulation going in order to clear out toxins and bacteria. And yarrow is also known as, in external use, as it stops bleeding. It's great for wounds, great for bruises. It'll shrink swollen veins. It's also got pain relieving properties. So I would keep this on hand as a oil, as well as a tincture. And yikes, we are almost out of time. Okay, thank you for the reminder. Hairy Mountain Mint is in the mint family. It's great. It can be made into beverages. We'll talk more about that one in our next class. And because I want to respect the time here, and calendula, which I've mentioned a little bit about. Both great for, well, calendula for skin healing, wounds, burns, and rashes. Might be helpful with ulcerative colitis. Very, very uplifting to the spirit, just being a plant that resembles sunshine. It's known for that, like helping with grief. And the last thing I'm gonna close on is thyme, which is also loaded with the antioxidants. It's antiviral, antibacterial, antifungal, antiseptic. So once again, based on our notes, that means this will be a good internal or external herb, great for respiratory health. And I'm sorry that I'm having to speed it up at the end, but I'm happy to take some quick time if folks have time for any questions. And we can definitely continue this next month when we're in person. So this was just minimal dive into these plants. I'm going to stop sharing and come back into the room. Thank you so much for keeping me on time, because we'll be the sun will be coming up. Folks will be like, what happened?
Problem. So anybody have any questions? I know that was a lot of information we just learned about. Great information. I learned me some things. I'm gonna
You
use
learned you some stuff.
it for sure.
Nicole, we can't talk about it right now, but I'd love to know your Yarrow and Queen Anne's lace blend, like what it's for and why you chose those two and what your thoughts are. Thank you. Could you chew raw thyme? Yeah, you could. You can, because fresh thyme, yes, you could chew it. And you can add it fresh to your sauces or any other way you want to use it, but you can chew it. Book recommendations. I will include in these slides the same list from the first slides in case folks didn't get the first set of slides. And then it'll have a partial, there's books forever, but it'll have some books there. Naja emailed out the slides to everyone that was on the list.
Yep, everybody received the slides from the first class. They'll get the slides from this class and the video.
Okay. Oh, Nicole, I see what you're saying. Okay. Okay, we can talk about identifying them to where that won't happen. Thank you. That's a good point. Will you receive the, yes. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all so much. So homework. No, okay. We were going to do a herbalist mission statement. So just be thinking about and you've already got to it. What does herbalism mean to you? And what do you think you're going to do walking out here in the world as a herbalist? I would just love to hear your mission statements at the next gathering in August, when we'll be together and we'll be making medicine, and you'll be having some stuff to take home with you, some dried herbs and some things, some supplies. So thank you all so very much for hanging in there with me. I appreciate you so much.
I have a question.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I have a quick question.
All right.
All of the plants that we're getting, they'll overwinter successfully in Michigan
Oh, yes.
without us having to do anything to them.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
I mean, Ashley is going to go over in detail in the last class about planning your garden, where you might want to put them. These are very hardy. They are definitely well suited to coming back, and don't be coming at us when they keep coming back and being all over the place. No, they're great for resilience. They are resilient.
Thank you.
If you didn't receive the first set of slides, I'm sure Naja can see to it that you do get them.
Yes, if anyone hasn't received them, just email me and remind me. I'll resend them to you.
I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful evening and weekends, and take some pictures of some plants, draw, journal, write a poem to a plant. Anyway, take care, everyone.
Thank you for coming, everyone. Good night. I'll send
Thank
out
you.
the
Good night.
video and slides for this class.
Oh.
Thank you.
You're off.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.